So it's November in Minnesota and there's still kale in the garden. We have dino kale, which we can use for our kale chips. We have red Russian kale, which is thinner, maybe best to use for cooking because it'll probably be too thin for kale chips. And we have regular green crinkly kale that we can also use for kale chips. And we have enough kale for a lot of chips. Hi, I'm Warren King and we're going to continue our cooking classes today with making kale chips. Kale is a really amazing superfood. I'm sure many Americans have never even tasted kale. I've often seen it on salad bars, like covering the ice. You'll see like curly kale covering the ice to look nice and green and vital, but nobody eats it. So now we're going to show an amazing way to eat it so you can have it almost every day. The word kale comes from the Latin caulis, which means stalk, and as you can see, it comes in a big stalk, and you find it in the health store in bunches. It also is called boerenkool, which is from the Dutch, which means farmer or peasant cabbage. I had a nutritional magazine listed the rating of all the vegetables and listed kale as number 1. It got a rating of almost 1400, and maybe second was spinach, which was 950, and onion was like 9. So kale is pretty amazing. It's in the brassica family of vegetables, and it's a cruciferous vegetable which includes broccoli, collards, cabbage, and Brussels sprouts. Kale has anti-inflammatory properties as it has omega-3s and is full of antioxidants. Would you believe that kale has more iron per calorie than beef and more calcium per calorie than milk? It also has 40% of the recommended daily allowance of magnesium, 180% of vitamin A, 200% of vitamin C, and 1020% of vitamin K. So K is for kale. It's also rich in minerals like copper, potassium, manganese, and phosphorus, and it's high in fiber content, and its high sulfur levels helps detoxify the body and clean the liver. In the ingredients in the kale chips, we'll also use nutritional yeast, which is not like brewer's yeast. It's a healthy form of yeast that is grown in a media of vitamins and minerals. So it has all the amino acids to make a complete protein, and it's full of B vitamins. It also has potassium, selenium, and selenium helps prevent cancer. We'll also use some red peppers, which has vitamin A, C, and K. The A and C are antioxidants, which protect cells and prevents aging. And vitamin K, which builds strong bones and helps with blood clotting. It's also high in lycopene, which helps prevent cervical, bladder, pancreatic, and prostate cancer. We're ready to make our kale chips. First we have to take the kale, which I took off the stalk. If you have a sharp knife, you can just cut it like paper, off the stem, the rib, which you can discard, and then you can take the kale and either rip it, or you can take it and slice it bite-sized pieces and put them in a bowl. I have 2 bowls here full of kale, so I'll double everything instead of making 2 batches. I'm going to do 1 batch with the dehydrator and 1 batch in the oven. So one of the ingredients is also red pepper. So you just cut the red pepper and take out the seeds. And cut into pieces so you can put it in the food processor. So if you're doing 1 bunch, just use half a red pepper. And then I'm going to put some tamari soy sauce. I like the wheat-free tamari. For 1 bunch, maybe 1 tablespoon. Since I'm doubling it, I'll do 2 tablespoons. And olive oil, which is very healthy by itself. Maybe 2 tablespoons. If you're doing 1 bunch, I'll do 4. And then lemon juice, which gives a nice flavor. So you can take a lemon, if you have a lemon squeezer like this, it makes it easier. It takes the seeds out, and you just squeeze the juice right in there. Or if you have some good quality lemon juice already in a bottle, you can just pour some lemon juice in there. I soaked some nuts. You can use any kind of nut, like cashews or sunflower seeds. Today I had walnuts, so about 3/4 cup of nuts, and soak them for about an hour or more to make them soft. Put them in there. And then about 1/3 of a cup of the nutritional yeast flakes. Pour that in there. And when you have everything, you put it in the food processor or the Vitamix, and then put it on and put it into a sauce. And that's all it takes. Then you take your kale, you put it in the bowl, and pour it over the kale, so when you massage it in there, every piece of kale will have a little bit of the sauce on it. Okay. And if you're squeamish, you can use a utensil to mix it in. The best way is just use your hands and massage it. Into every piece of kale has some sauce on it that gives it the flavor. You see that? It's all got a little bit, just has to have a little bit of flavor on each one. Now we're ready to dry our kale. I tossed it all in the dressing, and if you're using a dehydrator, I put a leather tray on the bottom so in case any drips down, it won't go in the dehydrator. Then I take a tray without anything on top of it and just spread out the kale. And then do that layers and layers. Try to have them not overlapping each other too much, but a little bit is okay. And then for the oven, I'm going to use some parchment paper and spread it out so they're not overlapping too much. And my oven, the lowest is 170, so we're going to do 170, maybe 2 hours. We'll check it, and maybe it'll go to 4 hours before they're all crunchy. And the dehydrator will do overnight, at least 6 hours. And then we'll check them when they're done. So now I have 5 layers filled in my dehydrator trays. Now I'll just put the lid on, and turn it on, and then it's cooking, which is a little bit easier than the baking, because the baking, one tray holds even less than one level of this, so if you're doing it in the oven, you might have 2 trays on different levels, and then you have to turn them over, and you might have to have some more in a plastic bag in the refrigerator to use as a second batch. So if you can get a dehydrator, that's good, but otherwise we're going to do the oven, set it at 170, which is the lowest this goes to, and then we'll let it dry in there. And we'll taste them when they're done. Now we're going to open our kale chips that were on overnight, and they have the flavor on it, and they're crunchy. Tasty. And then we have the ones in the oven. I had to turn them over after an hour and left them in for 4 hours. And even more crunchy. And there's a faster way. If you don't have much time, you could even just spray olive oil and a little sea salt and put them in the oven at 350 for 10 to 20 minutes. And they might not be as good as at lower temperature, but at least you'll have something healthy to snack on. Enjoy!